Let's look at the three remaining tools in the left panel: force duration, ties, and the scissors. It's pretty common to find yourself in this situation where, for instance, you bring up the caret, type 6 for a quarter or a crotchet, then period for a rhythm dot, then a pitch, and you go, wait a second, I asked for a dotted quarter, why is Dorico giving me this tied thing? And for that matter, if I add an eighth after it, why is Dorico changing its mind about this note? See how it's turned it into what I asked for? The answer is that Dorico groups notes according to a set of rules, and if you have Dorico Pro, you can go in and change these rules. And if you're looking at Elements or SE, keep watching for why Dorico is doing what it's doing, and for how to break the rules. So in Pro, on the right menu, down near the bottom, you'll find notation options, or it's Command-Shift-N or Control-Shift-N on Windows. In here, there's a whole heap of options that you can change globally, but I'm just going to focus on note grouping for now. Sometimes, such as with syncopated passages like this one, you might find that it takes a bit of experimentation. I mean, this option looks like it would apply to syncopation, but actually there's a whole separate set of options down the bottom for handling that. So if the first thing you try doesn't work, scroll through and find the picture that looks like your music. In this case, I'm in 4/4, so it's a simple time signature with or without a half bar, and it's this option that governs it. So if I switch this option, then apply, it's going to roll out that change everywhere in this flow. Now, if I copy and paste this passage into another flow, you'll see that Dorico then changes these notes back to the default options. And that's because changes in notation options are flow specific. If you want to change the rules across multiple flows, you can select multiple flows over here, and there's a select all button. You can also apply whatever you want, then save as default, and that way the same options will carry over to any new project. Now sometimes you may be doing something that notation options doesn't cover, or maybe you're using Elements or SE, and for these cases there's a tool called force duration. It's this G clamp here, or you can type O. Force duration can work in a couple of different ways. You can turn it on during note input, and that way Dorico will do exactly what you type. So here I've got the factory notation options. If I enter a dotted quarter without force duration, it's going to give me a quarter tied to an eighth. If I hit O before I type my dotted quarter, it'll give me a dotted quarter. Note that force duration is an override, so if I go back in and change this option so that it notates as a single note, these two notes are going to look the same. But when I change the notation option back to split at beat boundaries, it'll change this unforced one, but it'll leave the second one intact, because this one's forced. And if you change your mind and want the note to obey the notation options, you can grab the note and turn off force duration, again clicking the icon or typing O. The same applies to rests. If you want to split rests up, and most of the time you don't need to, you can turn on force duration, hit comma to turn on the rest tool, type whatever value you want, and then any pitch on your keyboard or MIDI controller. The other way to use force duration is retrospectively. So if you select a note and hit O, that locks the value or the values as they currently are. It doesn't automatically change the values because it doesn't know what you want. It just locks them. And that's handy if, for instance, you want to lock this down and then extend the note out, but keep the initial values the way they are, like this. But the point is, you don't need to delete and then re-input. So if I wanted to turn this into a dotted quarter, I could hit O to turn on force duration, then just retype the note value I want, so 6 period. To wrap up the left panel in write mode, let's take a look at the tie tool and the scissors. Now these are basically opposites. So if you have a bunch of the same note, you can hit T to tie them together, and again, those note grouping options are going to do their thing. Now let's say you want to do something fancy with dynamics and change throughout a single tied note, so you really want to show the note values. Turn on force duration before you tie, and that note will then be forced each step of the way. In the same way that you can select a group of notes and hit T to tie them all together, you can grab a tied note or a bunch of tied notes and hit U or select the scissor tool to split all the ties. If you want to split a tie in the middle of a tie chain, double-click the staff to invoke the caret, then type U and it'll just split that one tie. Now this is kind of a pro tip, and I love this functionality. You can actually split any note anywhere using the caret. This even works on notes that aren't tied, so I could split this quarter down to a pair of eighths, or if I set the rhythmic grid to something shorter, I could split it down further. So that's fourth duration, the tie tool, and the scissors.